Or you want to go ahead and, oh, we are going to record this part. We also are going to encourage you to share your raw data as well as anything else you might want to share. So why don't we go ahead and get the PowerPoint back up and just kind of see where we are in the report out that we're going to use. Great, thank you, Hillary. So in the return to the full group, like we were saying earlier, we are going to ask you to choose one question, the reporter from each group, and then to share the responses. We would like to also have a continued discussion, and I'm hoping that we will have time for that. As you're listening, please really capture those ideas that are that rise to the top for you, that really resonate with you, things you really agree with. You may just jot them down or enter them into the chat. We really want to be able to capture those things that are resonating for the majority of people. We can go back and visit those. We can also go back and visit everything we're going to be talking or sharing today to see what we can do. So really looking at what can we continue, what can we stop, and what is really possible? What is that, ideal world? So I'm sure you all have the answers, great answers to this. So let's see, what have we got here? I am going to ask for a volunteer from one of the groups, the reporter, who would like to start.
I could start.
Thank you, Shira.
So let me just pull my notes back up here. I think that the main thread that really came up during our conversation that our group really spoke about was to have more follow-up work, and group, please jump in and correct me if I'm not getting this straight, but having more follow-up work, more time with our region, and having more ability and time within these meetings to do some action planning versus having kind of one and done trainings. Really being able to take that thread and then pull that into how we will apply that in our region, and really begin to do some of the actual planning and working and utilizing this time to connect, because sometimes just our worlds don't allow for that.
That's great. Great. Okay. Thank you, Shira. Do any other group members want to add to that in Shira's group? Okay. Thank you. Who would like to go next?
I can go.
Thank you, Danny.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and give our answers to question number 3. We discussed a lot that there was something missing from doing this over Zoom, that we would like to see a collaborative back in person at least once a year, and that the need we really have is around collaborative problem solving for issues in our regions, particularly places where the hub and CCR&R work crosses over, like preschool promise and inclusion work as well. And since this is supposed to be an equity COP, that feels like the right place for that work to happen. And then I put the notes in the chat box, but so there's a whole bunch of things wrapped in with those topics of inclusion and preschool promise and EICSE work and all of those things. So that is what we would love.
Thank you, Danny. That's great. And it looks like we're getting some great agrees here. Learning collaboratives, loved the in-person. And thank you so much for those who are entering your notes in the chats. We do want to share these with the people who were not able to come today too. So this is great. So anything to add? Danny's group, anyone want to add anything? Okay, thank you. Who would like to go next?
I can go.
Thank you, Jen.
Sure. One of the things we talked about that we thought would be a better use of time on these meetings is if the small groups could be created a little bit more deliberately. So either we're with our own region or with similar hubs so that we can be addressing specific problems the way they manifest in our part of the state.
Okay. So can I just ask a quick question about that,
Sure.
Jen? So are you thinking of like similar size regions? Would
Right,
that be an
exactly.
example? Okay,
Right.
okay, great. Thank you. That's wonderful. Anyone want to, in Jen's group, want to add anything? Great. Okay, thank you so much. Who'd like to go next?
I can go next.
Okay.
A lot of what's said, we also said, being in person is really important. Another piece to it is having the CCR and hub provide topics that we can all spend some time reflecting and having a conversation about, and knowing what our topics are in advance with a purpose and a goal.
Oh, thank you. So knowing topics in advance with a purpose and a goal.
And having hub and CCR and our buy-in to what those topics are.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Karen. That's great. So just to clarify, another clarifying question with this is, so thinking along the lines of what's been said earlier as far as problem solving, so kind of a consistent maybe issue that's coming up, this would be an opportunity to that the hubs and CCRNRs would share, and then there would be problem solving. Okay.
Yes. And like it was, I think in the chat, it said too, just really understanding each other's roles and how we work together with Preschool Promise. It feels like communication that comes out, hubs get their communication, CCRNR gets their communication, and we aren't talking together about that communication, and that's a problem.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question to the group about that? And I feel like I'm at the risk of suggesting another meeting, but does it feel like we would want this meeting time to sometimes be that problem of practice, problem solving, and other times for it to be hearing the same news, discussing the implications at the same time? Are those separate purposes within one meeting slot, or I just want to think more about that, because I agree it is challenging internally for us to get information to at the same time, and sometimes we're I really wish that we could share this at the same time and all hear each other's questions and answers. So I'm curious about that.
Oh, I don't know if anybody else on our team can answer to that, Carmen. But I think it's really important for us to spend, either if we get communications at the same time via email, that we are all included. So we understand what each other's roles are and the perspectives that the ELD is expecting of each hub or CCRNR.
That's great, Karen. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. And it looks like there's some great other clarifications in the chat. A standing agenda item at the top of each meeting, that's a suggestion, or a small meeting with topic planning ahead of time. Great, thank you. Anyone else in Karen's group that wants to add anything?
I added in the chat that we talked about possibly having a small planning group with a hub person, a CCRNR person, and an ELD soon to be DELC person, and bringing topics from their groups and having that discussion ahead of time. And so it's relevant to all.
Thank you, Jillian. I captured that suggestion. That's great. Thank you. All right, so we have more groups, right? I didn't count them. Okay, who would like to go next?
I'll go.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
So we also, I'll talk about question number 3, how to reflect on what would take place that would look forward to these connections. And we actually talked about not having this meeting and maybe moving towards an annual conference or quarterly in-person meetings, or arranging in-person meetings before conferences. We talked a lot about how we feel like we learn so much more in person, and that the communication is better. We have more breakthroughs. We're not so immersed in deliverables. We're all about building relationships, and we want that relationship building to be led by Delk in the future.
Great, thank you, Chris. Clearly, we're hearing back in person too. That is definitely coming through. So thank you for all of that. The best partnership building happens over dinner. Thank you, Jen. Isn't that true? Anyone else in Chris's group wants to add anything? Okay, great. Who would like to go next?
Kelly Poe is here. I can speak for my group, I think, unless they can jump in. We've agreed, we've said a lot of what we've heard so far. The information, there's information meetings. We talked a little bit, there's information meetings existing for CCR&R and hubs with the ELD, so separately for information sharing. What we find unique about this meeting is, or where there's a potential here, is that when something's presented, whether it's a topic or data, we should have the opportunity to dig in deeper and really connect. So we have the opportunity to take this information and take it back to our local community together, rather than just having information presented to us. And we said in person would be ideal.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. All right, I'm capturing that as well. Anyone want to add, and who is in Kelly's group, want to add to what she's shared? All right, great. And just keeping an eye on the chat here. We've got childcare challenges. Sorry. Oh, that's our work, isn't it? Thank you for bringing that up. That is really important, Shira. So, are there any groups left? Who has not spoken, would like to speak? Okay, and I think everybody, we've got all the groups. I'm sorry I wasn't counting. So why don't we go ahead and we're getting a lot of great stuff in the chat. I'd like to just maybe get some call outs for these 3 questions, hearing what you've heard, what you've discussed. What would you say we can continue? Just some call outs.
Spending time together. I really want time together, and I think it's valuable.
Great, thank you. Taya, that's. Anyone else? Okay, what can we stop? And we like honesty. We won't take it personally. What can we stop?
Unclear purpose.
Unclear purpose. Thank you, Jessica. Anything else?
I think we could stop monthly meetings and have less frequent, longer meetings so that we can dig in.
Okay, less frequent, longer. Okay, great. All right. So the what is possible you've been sharing. Lots of great ideas. What I'd like to do now is go ahead, let's move to the next slide. And how can we start moving some of these ideas to action? And Jillian has already called it out. Thank you, Jillian. I was trying not to say anything while you were sharing, but one of the thoughts is form a work group that actually does represent all of the partners. So someone from the hubs, from the CCR&Rs and ELD or DELP, to really start looking at this, kind of take the lead, gather this feedback, gather these brainstormed ideas, and start designing this meeting, this group, this connection, what it could look like. Start pulling together some of the priorities of focus areas. And so I was saying based on chat responses, but I'm sure it's much bigger than that. And that would be something that the work group could be gathering. Karen, as you were saying, what are the topics? What are the issues that keep coming up over and over again? And how can we look at those and do a deep dive? And I know several people have called out what are the roles, especially when we look at preschool promise, and some of the work involved with that. So then, of course, that does bring in another meeting. How might we be able to schedule these and plan the meetings, which really also speaks to what you were saying, Jessica, and that's the unclear purpose. Like, how do we clarify and have a really clear understanding, pathway, roadmap, and purpose as we move forward? And then, of course, implementing our new design with a plan to, study how is it working, evaluate it, and revise it as we need it. So are there any other thoughts? What are your thoughts about this? Karen, a new name for the meeting? Yes, that's a new name, a new purpose. Look at our norms, meeting norms again, all of that. Yes, yes. Well, so any other thoughts, ideas you want to make sure that we are looking at here? And I am also going to ask if anyone is really, really enthusiastic and excited about joining this work group to go ahead and call that out too. So agreements, no's, something's missing. Any other things people want to add? So I'll just ask if you want to throw in the chat or do raise thumbs or emojis of any kind, your thoughts about this plan.
Jen has volunteered in the chat to join the work group if we can launch after the RSA, which I think is very fair.
Yes, I agree. And Danny, are you saying you agree that you would join, or you just agree with what Jen's saying about the RSA?
Danny agrees that Jen should join after the RSA.
Okay, so we have Jessica. Great, a charter for the group. Although, thank you everyone for entering chats. See, this is the thing about Zoom, and as opposed to in person. I can go stand by someone if I want them to talk. I can't stand next to you if we're in Zoom. All right, great. Jessica, we have a CCR&R person and we have a hub person. It would be great to have a couple more, one from each, but I think we have a good start there. So that's really wonderful. And so I think next steps then is we will pull together a work group and we will go ahead and move forward with starting to make these changes, work together to change the name, look at the meeting norms, and start looking at a new design. So, and if you haven't already, would you please drop your notes in the chat, or you can email them to me, whichever is easiest. And we can be looking at those too as we move forward. Any last thoughts? Well, I appreciate all of your input and all of your work today. And also I appreciate the enthusiasm for this work as well. The connections are so valuable. And it's really great to see everyone again.